The webinar will start in 3 minutes. The webinar will start in 2 minutes. The webinar will start in 1 minute. Well, good afternoon and welcome to the TFEA COVID-19 Task Force webinar. Is this the new norm? It looks like this is going to be a pretty active webinar because we've not had this many people on this early since we started. They were just flying on. So it's with great pleasure that I get to introduce our speaker today, Geoff Fairchild. And Geoff is from the city of, I always have to look because I don't want to say the wrong one. He was in McKinney for a while, but he's now at Farmers Branch. So he's a native Floridian who began his career with the Spring Fest Music Festival in Pensacola, serving as a marketing director for 5 years. Then he moved to Texas, where he belonged, in 2002. Sorry, Geoff.
That's all right. I'm with you.
Okay. He began working with the city of Richardson, where he served as special events manager for 14 years under Parks and Recreation Department. And the events that he worked with there was the award-winning Cottonwood Arts Festival and the Wildflower Arts and Music Festival, which is one I've always wanted to go to. He then joined the city of McKinney as their special events coordinator and oversaw events such as the McKinney Oktoberfest, Arts in Bloom, and Home for the Holidays. Currently, he is the special events manager for the city of Farmers Branch and produces events such as the Bloomin' Bluegrass Festival, Christmas in the Branch, and Denton Drive Live. He's a graduate of Leadership Pensacola and earned his CFEE status from IFEA, and he is also a graduate of the University of Southern Mississippi, an accounting degree from the University of West Florida. So marketing and accounting, they must go together. Welcome, Geoff. We look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you so much, Kay. It's an honor to speak to our membership base today, and I think we're all just a lot of uncertainty out there. And I just want to say, you know, there's this session. There is really no right or wrong answer for this. We're all dealing with something we've never, ever dealt with in our careers before. We all need to lean on each other in this time. And, to my knowledge, there are not a lot of events that have already happened on the scales that we're used to putting on. And so who can sit here and, oh, well, that didn't work, this worked, and you should have been doing that, should have not been doing that. So it's just an excellent time for us to get together as a membership, as an association, and talk through some things and kind of see where this is headed. So deciding when to reopen, that's the question that seems to be that changes daily. And things for us in Farmers Branch are changing daily. In fact, right now, our city manager is meeting with our mayor and director to determine whether we too are going to cancel our fireworks show next Thursday night. It's just that's how quickly things are moving. And so I think we're all familiar with the latest governor's orders that came out effective on June 3rd, which basically gave blessing, if you will, to move forward with the large scale events. I think a lot of that was prompted by knowing that Independence Day celebration was coming up, and that there needed to be some sort of guidance from the state on how to best move forward. So, he sent out the guidelines there, the standard, the checklist for outdoor events. I fully anticipate him to send out something fairly quickly again, as we have all seen what's happening in our state. We're now being lumped in there with Florida and California as the three worst case scenarios, I guess, if you will, that are going on. Apocalyptic is the word I think I saw today being described, and 5,000 new cases alone yesterday in Texas. So this is something we all need to take seriously, obviously. And so, I pulled just this opening slide, just some verbiage here, and it really kind of struck home with me. This came from the Event Safety Alliance Reopening Guide, and you'll hear me talk about that and reference that many times today. I found it to be a really good guideline, if you will, to refer to, very detailed, just a lot of things they covered. And so in their opening page there, it just kind of, it made me stop and think, because you're right. I mean, just because the government says you can, maybe doesn't mean you should. Just all depends on how you can do this safely. But I just want to say I recommend that, and I'll get to some other resources here shortly. But that you'll hear me speak of that several times in today's presentation. And I do want to say, at any time, if you want to stop and ask a question, feel free. Jessica and Kay will let me know when that's happened, and we'll get that going, because honestly, that's the best way I think we're going to learn and get through this, is just the dialogue amongst the membership of who's doing what and what worked, what didn't work, and things to consider, because I can tell you no one knows everything, and no one can think of everything that they need to take into consideration to open those gates and let the public in. So with that, we'll get started here. And so next, so factors we're up against. And I thought, oh my gosh, what all the things that we have to contend with? Well, public perception attitude, I think, is right there at the top. I mean, you can do everything you effectively can to put on a great event and plan for it, but if the public just doesn't feel safe in coming out, then they're just not ready, and there's just not a lot we can do as event planners. So it's just there, the public perception, limited financial resources, and the capabilities to provide a safe environment. Some of us, our budgets are being reduced because of our cities are not bringing in revenue and tax base like they were a year ago, and events were the first thing to go. And those events that are left, you may have reduced budgets. And now those of us that have starting to plan our events and starting to see some of the costs that we're incurring to put on these events, more hand sanitizers, hiring clean teams and more signage. Do you want to take temperature? So those are all things that we're challenged with is putting on our events. And as you start planning out and safely doing things, it's oh my gosh, do we need more shuttle buses? Why? Because we can't put as many people on a shuttle bus, and we still got, there's all things that are starting to affect our budgets that we just didn't think of a year ago. Our next is the COVID cases, the hotspots in Texas. Things are just changing. I say daily, it's more hourly, and counties are just impacted differently. Obviously, the metro areas are what's being focused on, and that seems to have the most attention, but as people travel from the metro areas into the rural and the outlier counties, so I just don't think someone in, for example, West Texas can say, well, this is not really relevant to me. No, it's relevant everywhere. No one is immune, and no event is immune. I think we're, to a degree, a little bit of COVID fatigue. I think, that's up for debate. We could probably spend another hour just, of what's happened in the last 2 months when Texas decided to reopen, and folks just kind of said, hey, we're back in business. Well, not so fast. And we're seeing that as a result. And I think when we were all started out this journey, we're all in this together. And I seriously question sometimes whether that's still the same philosophy, good or bad. It keeps me up at night sometimes. Gosh, this next one, mixed messaging from government and health agencies certainly doesn't help us as event planners when trying to set forth a plan. There just seems to be daily different, this side, that's, there just seems to be different positions taken, different messaging, and it just, a lack of a consistency, I think, is, we're starting to see the effects of that, obviously. Social media, it's just the information that's out there that it's not accurate, things that pop up, it just, again, it's conspiracy theory, you name it, it's out there. And sadly, a lot of people get their information from social media and count that as, this is the sacred word, and we're up against that and trying to formulate a plan. And we as event planners, we don't have the luxury of segregating our events by those who want to wear a mask and those who think you don't have to, and those that believe that you should practice social distancing and those that don't. We don't have that luxury. We're doing events for the most part for mass audiences, and we just have to take that bird's eye, safety is our priority, and everyone kind of has to play by the rules of the event. And so, but again, we're just up against this. And the last thing is what are reasonable and responsible steps we should be taking to ensure patron safety? And I wish I could say that I look around, and I'm just going to speak about North Texas, and I wish I could say I could look around and see that happening with our profession. And sadly, I'm already seeing cases of that not happening. And I'm not going to call these on the advice of Kay. I'm not going to call these cities out by name, but I'm a little shocked at what I have seen so far with a couple of cities that have already begun some concert series and do not appear, at least from their website and social media, to put out any information ahead of time as far as educating the public and what to expect, and when they get there, and what we as the event expect from them. Now, I'm going to disclaimer, I didn't go to this event. It's happening again tonight. They may be doing stuff on site for all I know, but I think part of our responsibility is, before you even get to the site, is educating and telling people what you can expect. Here are basically the rules of the event, and I've just not seen that in this one particular case. And I've seen another case where another city is hosting their July 4th event and doesn't seem to be scaling back on any activities, you go to their website, there's absolutely no mention of COVID. There is nothing. Again, they could be doing something on site, but when I see an event that's going, basically as is, as the same they did last year, I get nervous, and I think we need to be better at that. And I'm not saying it's gross negligence, but by gosh, I think it comes up to the line and almost crosses it. But I just say that because I think those of you that are on this call, you care, you're concerned, but I just think that question, and again, it doesn't help the general overall, because now you have different things going on at different events, different standards, different expectations. And it's, I think it can start playing into, well, they don't have to do that over there, and this, that, and the other. And well, I just think it can, I think we as an association need to be better than that. And that's all I have to say about that. All right. So we'll keep rolling here. Next thing is, so resources. You've decided, hey, we're going to open up. our leadership, our cities, our director, our board, everyone has given us the green light. We want to move forward with an event. So how do we start to prepare and plan for that? And found a lot of excellent resources out there already. Obviously, the Texas, the governor, that checklist I mentioned earlier. The CDC has a wonderful page of considerations for events and gatherings. I certainly would look at that. Our own TFEA website has a lot of information as well, and links of things of that nature. And then I think the IFEA, if you've not been to their COVID reopening guide page, it is a wonderful place to start. And there's a lot of information. I have to say this, I think it's almost a little too much information as I went through and started navigating through the page. And I think, bless their hearts, I think they just kind of put up anything and everything as it relates to COVID, which is good in a way, but I think, in my opinion, it just seemed like there was a lot. And, you know, here we are, 3-4 months into this, and there's already information that I think is outdated and probably should be come down and everything and revamped because things are changing so quickly. But I thought that was a very good page, but you'll just have to spend some time and go through. I mean, there was even a guide on how to clean radios. I mean, it's very detailed. A lot of it is just, I think, like I said, anybody that sent them a link, I hate to say it looks like they might have just put it up there, but I found really 2 good resources there. Again, this Event Safety Alliance reopening guide, I think, is an excellent tool for us, very detailed, and they put some time into it. And even though it came out, you know, I think last month, I do feel it's very relevant today. And then I just happened to see on there, this was curious. I was like, okay, I didn't see any state publications coming out. And I think Texas certainly needs to get on that one, the state of Texas. But I said, I saw State of West Virginia guidance for fairs. And I thought, okay, let's check this one out. And I thought it was good. It was about 3 pages, 2 to 3 pages, not as detailed as the ESA, but I thought it was a good bird's eye kind of overall. Here are the high points that you need to take into consideration. And so I thought that was a good one as well. So I would definitely lean on those as you make your way into this decision that you're going to be making. Obviously, our TFEA membership base, excellent examples of safety plans, and that's what we're here for to discuss today. And then your local municipalities, I think you do need to consider them and factor them into your discussions because they're going to be relevant. And you know, for example, your fire marshal, I think you know, as you get to laying out your sites and have to take into consideration more space that's needed, and you might start encroaching on fire lanes that you didn't before, and you're going to need larger tents maybe for more spacing, and that's permits and things of that nature. So I do feel fire department, it needs to be consulted. Your police department, and for both of these departments, I think staffing could become an issue if you lean on them and use them for your events and staffing. I mean, just yesterday in Dallas PD announced 11 officers tested positive for COVID. So these first responders, a lot of them are on that front line. And so that's just some staffing there if you're using them. You know, police department, things that they need to be considered about and discussing with them. For example, searching bags. I mean, if your police department did that routinely, they may say, hey, like, you know, we don't want to do that anymore. That's just not safe anymore. So maybe it's moving on to a clear bag policy and maybe no bag policy. And so there's just some discussions with regards to security and COVID. So I think that's where it will be. You just can't forget about these guys, these different agencies in your reopening plan. Next. So again, I'll just say this, there is so much to consider. There's just not enough to put it all into a PowerPoint here. But these are the things that right away come to mind. You know, limited capacity. This is reduced attendance of your events. Is it just time to reimagine some of the components of your events? You reduce your operations because you're going to have to just allow for that. Or maybe it's reduced hours because you just don't want people there as long, and that obviously increases the chances that people will be exposed to things. Things to look at, walking patterns, just like your grocery stores now. Is that something to think about as you're laying out your footprint there for your site? I think it needs to be made clear with your vendors as to who's cleaning what during the events and what they're responsible for, what you as the event planner are responsible for. And as you're going through your site layouts, you just don't forget about the ADA and thinking that you just need to stay compliant with that. And, you know, as things start, lines become longer and people can't stand in line that long. And these are just all the little details you just got to start thinking about, because it will take longer to get through your event. Just lines are going to be longer and just people maybe can't stand that long. So just start thinking about those things. Who manages the occupancy loads and line queuing at your event? Is it your vendors that if it's a midway type thing, if it's a tent, a sponsor tent or something, and it's a big 20 by 20, are they managing who all is coming in their tent? So just some things to think about as you move forward. You may have an issue with volunteers. I can tell you firsthand, it happened with us last week with our Bluegrass Festival, which tends to draw an older demographic volunteer base. They've already told us for Farmers Branch Road Society, we're not going to be coming out this year. Our volunteers are older. And so just something to think about as you plan. And I just would not rely on that as a given anymore. With that, you may have to adjust and pivot as our Joe had come, you know, the strategy this year for the conference. You may have to come up with fewer gateways and volunteers that were serving beer and running craft stations and staffing VIP areas. You just may have to just be prepared that you just may not get the numbers that you typically might get. Something that hit us with here in Farmers Branch, we've had 3 of our staff test positive for COVID in Parks and Rec. And, you know, as I told our team here, you know, we need to make sure for our July Independence that we're all as much involved in the planning of that event as possible. And so that we all know what's going on in the other areas of responsibility. It's just anticipation that one of us on our team might get sick. And if you're like our organization, you're out 14 days, no questions asked if you test positive. So that's just something to think about. And it's like, oh, it can't happen to me. You know, we won't get sick. No, you just have to think that could possibly happen. So start including everybody in as much planning as possible, at least so they're aware in case, hey, unless Jeff Fairchild goes down. I mean, they need to know what all we're doing. Obviously, reduced budgets is going to be a huge factor for us to look through and work through. And you may have to reallocate to cover new expenses, or you may not have enough to do what you want to do because of reduced budgets. This next one, you know, events, everyone's rescheduling, trying to look to the fall. You may have fewer options out there with programming, entertainment, rental options, because everyone's going to be wanting to do events once we hopefully get to that point. So if you haven't already, you know, it's just a reservation, put it down, get those things already programmed and booked, because you may find yourself fighting out against events that you didn't have to consider before because they were taking place in the spring. So just something to think about as well. Your event demographics may dictate your decisions about your events. If it's an older crowd, our Bluegrass Festival is definitely an older 60 crowd. So that may, you know, whether we pull the measures in place or not, they may just decide they don't want to come out. If it's an event that's a younger audience with kids and parents, again, the comfort level may not be there. So just kind of keep that in mind, that could be a reason why you just maybe scale back or maybe not even reopen at all. This was an interesting one, an infection mitigation coordinator. That's straight from the ESA reopening guide. It was a very good position if, you know, maybe your emergency management department or someone on your staff, on your team. I don't know if it's a contracted position, but someone who takes the lead and just makes sure that you're doing everything you can and is going to keep track of that. That's the biggest thing. I mean, my gosh, one more thing to add to our plate as you're trying to do an event is keeping up with all that should be done and needs to be done. And the ESA had a very good job description of what all that responsibility, everything from identifying areas to the training to make sure things are being done, to the documentation. So a good position to add to, if not already, but someone with some training, some risk management, some health background was suggested there. Preparing your site for cleaning both before and during the event. And I'll touch on that a little bit later. but that's something to consider when we're reopening. And here's this could happen. What if a confirmed case? What is your response plan for that? Whether it be a staff member, a volunteer. So just kind of have that, be thinking about that, because you just don't want to be caught afterwards not knowing what to do if that happens. And I think that the ESA offers some good guidelines on how to, move forward and how best to respond to that situation there. But again, you just can't ignore the possibility that it might happen. But bottom line is, you put a safety plan in place, but you just have to be realistic about what you can realistically manage and do. So that would be one thing I would just stress, is that just don't make all these promises that if you realistically just cannot do. So just a couple, since this is such a huge part of all of our events, is just some things with food and beverage operations. Obviously, we all know about the 6 foot the barrier there, but do you even eliminate dining tables and chairs altogether? And just it's time to refigure how often do those get cleaned. Your layout for your concessions, more space between booths, more line space. Even the signage now, we're doing that for our vendors now, just because we want it to be able to be read from a distance, and I just don't rely on our concessionaires to do that. So we're doing our own signs now so that we can put them further out, spacing them further from the booth. Just larger print, just something we're going to do just to allow for more distancing. The self-serving of food, condiments, utensils should all be prohibited now. Your workers and the protective equipment, your frontline shields there, the screening, all these things, the serving containers. No one's getting a frozen margarita machine. It's getting a lid put on it now, so no one's being handed open type things. So just different things that we're looking at, and this touchless payment options. That's huge. And how can we facilitate that? I mean, obviously it's a lot involved there to do that, but if you can mitigate that in any way possible, then that's certainly one more step you're taking to put on that safe environment there. And I think it's important to publish in advance the steps your concessionaires are taking, so that the public is aware of that and knows, hey, this is a responsible event. I have a responsible concessionaire thinking about this. And it just, so if I'm planning to come to this event, I know that there are the steps being taken to prepare my food safely. And I know some of our events that we're doing coming up, we were not doing food at all. 4th of July, we just made a decision, just bring your cooler, and then encouraging people on top of that, bring your own trash bag, help lessen the chance of transmission of germs and everything, and having to go to a trash bag. Please bring your own. And so just things that I would encourage if you're allowing coolers. And one thing to think about here for those of us that are buying, you sell a lot of beer, or you just can't take anything for granted anymore that you're going to be able to get it in the quantities that you were used to getting. I mean, to my knowledge, they're not even doing draft beer right now, because there's the bars and restaurants and things of that nature are not pouring draft beer. So I would just be having conversations with your beer distributors going down the road. Hey, are we going to be able to have this for our events? And will that even be allowed in production? And just, again, not taking anything for granted that you're going to be able to get your hands on that kind of stuff. Feeding your staff and entertainers, this has taken a whole new dynamic for us. And unfortunately, it's more costly. We used to do the pizzas and, order 20 for staff. Not anymore. We're all doing individual meals from Chick-fil-A, and it's just the new norm, as they say. I just can't, set everything out and let people just come into the tent and feed themselves. It's just not that way anymore. And it'll be interesting when our entertainers start coming in for our Bluegrass Festival, because we have a huge buffet area backstage. I'm curious how that's going to happen. It may be totally different, but then, gosh, your costs go up with that as well. So you just can't forget about those things. You just don't want your entertainers to arrive and see something that they're not comfortable with. So again, something to think about there. But as always, you contact your health department for guidance and things of that nature. I am curious about some of those specialty type food and beverage operations. I'm curious out there. I'll throw this question out. Is, those concessionaires like the Wild Bill sodas, the ones where, it's the big, you get your glass and you just fill your mug up throughout the weekend. Has anybody had any conversations with those type vendors to see what they think the future is like? I'm curious for something like that.
And I'll just make a note, if you are able to, if you want to interject any thoughts or comments, you can click on the raise hand functionality and I'll be able to open your microphone up.
Yeah, that was the one concessionaire that came to mind just because of the community. You got folks all just gathering up there at the soda bar and getting filling their beverages up. And I thought, oh gosh, is this even going to happen anymore? These types of operations. And they make good money for you. So I don't know. I just was that was one that came to mind there.
We don't have any hands raised yet, but we have had a couple of comments. One person said, I've only heard that you bring your own cup and use a new cup for refills. That was one commentary. And then another commentary mentioned, I think Governor Abbott came out with some new announcements yesterday, which was that he scaled back a previous statewide order and gave local officials the ability to place restrictions on outdoor gatherings of over 100 people as the threshold. So originally he had set it at 500 people, I think. And
to my knowledge, though, it's still deferred back to the city or the local.
It's up to the local entity, is my understanding as well. You have the ability to restrict it if you as the local official want to.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, next. So, here's a question to ask yourself. I think it's time to take inventory and of your event and just how many different places, person-to-person contact in high-touch areas that take place at your event. I think you'll be surprised when you start thinking about this and how you want to move forward on that. And is it eliminating? Is it mitigating? How? I mean, that's for each of us to decide. But do yourself a favor, take inventory, and just think of all the different areas: restrooms, dining tables, chairs. They're all there, and how do we address that? And again, I think we'll all have to come up with our ways of doing that. Here are just some of the things that, kids crafts, your kid zones, face painters, bounce houses, strolling characters, dancing in front of the stages now. I mean, it's just, all this is just taken on a different dynamic now and how we move forward. Your admission lines, adequate space. We touched on that earlier, the touchless options, for those events that are ticketed and also do walk-up business, day of show stuff. Do you truly want to make things easier? No cashiers anymore up front, no box office, just everything is done online in advance, or they come up and they just have to use their phone. Now, I get that your demographics may present some challenges if an older audience may not be as technically fluent, and there are still some that come to our office because they won't put their credit card online and want to pay in person. So I get it, but there's some steps you could definitely take if you want to eliminate that contact at your event. Don't forget about these interactive sponsor and marketing displays that are out there. I think we've all have spun the wheel of crap at a certain conference. These are that requires people touching that. So those are things that Jessica, I'm sure, has already thought of and moving forward. And
I love it. I love it. Yes.
But you can't forget about that though. I mean, those areas, it's not just your vendors and concessionaires. It's every sponsor that's coming in is going to have some sort of interaction, and what are they doing with that and how they're going to, handle that. And then your entertainers, there's just so much there when it comes to putting on a stage performance, and with regards to backstage, on stage, and the load-ins and the folks coming in traveling from out of state. But those are just areas you really need to think about. And the ESA, I thought, had some good topics and things to think about. And oh my gosh, they had a whole list of areas to make sure you're sanitizing when it comes to your stage performance. And And I thought this was interesting. The governor's office, state of West Virginia, they even go so far as to discourage singing of other performers, i.e. your audience, during a concert. I thought, okay, well, yeah, if you want to, that's certainly something doable. I just thought, how do you pull that off? But, at least they're thinking about that. And, maybe you get a band to say, hey, folks, we know you love our #1 hit, but maybe you just mouth it to yourself and don't really sing to the audience. I don't know. But obviously, if you're doing stage viewing areas, those are going to have to be limited or adjusted. And there's some guidance in there on how best to do that, and cordoning off sections and things of that nature. But you can't forget about that if you're doing those general audience type performances. And I threw this in here for Santa Claus. That seems to be our running around our office here about what's Santa going to do this year. I don't know, folks. I mean, but you need to start thinking 6 to 12 months down the road, and things of like your holiday events and that far down, and things that you just always used to do. And will there be a Santa Claus this year? Yes, there will be, but I don't know. He may be in a mask. Who knows? But I just say that so you just don't let it sneak up on you. Start thinking down the road. I think you just have to, as we prepare for our annual events there. Next. So here's a question to ask yourself of how are you going to enforce that at your events, if at all? Who handles complaints, and what steps will you do to address those complaints? I would not wait until the event starts. I would, if you're hiring, if you have officers at your event, or just, I don't know, it's a very slippery slope. It's tricky. I don't know if people are not following the guidelines, how you want to address that. But I would just have that discussion with your leadership and those on your teams, and just say, what are we going to do to address this if it comes up? Because I'm sure you know it will. Someone's going to come up. We've all seen the videos of confrontations in stores where someone was too close, and then you start mixing alcohol in that. So just be prepared for that. And here's something that was just interesting note. When you have to do an emergency evacuation, basically social distancing becomes secondary. Life and safety, life safety dictates that we just get people in the safest environment we can at the given time, given what's coming and the circumstances. And you just can't be concerned with social distancing sometimes when it becomes to that. So this kind of leads me to the one poll question for the day, and you can read it there, but Jessica, I think, take it away.
Sure thing. Okay, so you should see the poll up on your screens that says, if during the course of your event it was evident attendees were not following the posted rules on social distancing, would you cease operations either temporary or permanently? And your options are yes, no, or I'm not sure how we'd handle that. And so I like to leave the poll up for just a few seconds here. Give everyone an opportunity to chime in. Definitely a good question, Jeff, because it's evenly splitting between a lot of folks. So
okay.
That's always interesting to see. I'll go ahead and give everyone about 3 more seconds to get their answer in. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the polling and share those results. So you can see about half of the folks who answered are not sure how they'd handle that. And then the other half is split almost evenly.
Yeah, there, like I say, no right or wrong answer, folks. It's just good feedback to and at least gets you thinking about it as you prepare for your reopening. Next. So this is obviously a big one, the education and the expectation of your vendors, event staff, and volunteers, and the health and hygiene. And why is this so important? Is because, they're working in close quarters, and there's just no way, it's hard to get around not having your volunteers and workers not work together. It's just, so it's a good thing to start looking at and thinking about. Your Event Safety Alliance has a very good section on this, and almost 3.5 pages they dedicate to this. That's how strongly they feel about this. And I agree. And again, they're all the practices that they're identifying, the hand washing, the face coverings, the temperature screening, it's all there. I would refer you to that. I'm even responding to confirmed cases and sick workers. And it's just something you need to be aware of and start getting out there for your staff and volunteers and vendors as to what you expect coming in and what you're going to do for them, and how this event can safely take off. But I definitely would refer to that alliance. Again, that was 3.5 pages, and it really just would take too long to try and go through, but they had a lot of best practices, and I would refer to that. This next one, I've already been having these conversations with our vendors. I'm very curious what they're doing. I think we all should be, because they're renting these out, they will be, and you want to know that it's arriving on your event site sanitized as best it can. I'm talking everything from restrooms and golf carts to tables and chairs and things of that nature, and even tents. Don't think that tents now, because some of these tents are being used as COVID testing sites. So, you just ask the questions. You want to know that they're staying on top of that before they deliver to your event site. And so when your vendors are in place at your event, what are they going to be doing? Best practices, and ask these and have them put it in writing. They need to be able to provide that. So it's amusement rides, the games, the concessions we've talked about, your marketplace vendors. This is a big one here, because these are a lot of mom and pop. They're independent. That's their weekend job. It's not their some of them, maybe it might not be their main line of work. How's that going to look and feel, your marketplace areas? Your hat vendor, your clothing vendor, your jewelry vendor. I mean, are they going to, just all those things that you need to start thinking about with them, and are they going to be monitoring their tents and setting them up and not letting people walk in unless there's adequate distance between, and will they have touchless payment options? So just things to think about for your marketplace area. One thing that we just discussed this morning, our staff, is moving forward, we're going to put that as part of our applications for our sponsor booths, our food booths, our marketplace booths. That's basically going to become a question, is what will you be doing to provide a safe environment? Give us your safety plan for your operation at our event site. And we'll also put in there that you will be required to wear a mask at this event. Now, you can't require attendees. That's what's been come down from the way we interpret it, is that you still can't require attendees, but you can require it for those people that are working for you and volunteers. So we're going to put that in there. But I do think you need to be asking your sponsors and your marketplace people to submit with their application the steps they're taking. And if they don't, then that tells you probably about that particular person. And it's not too much to ask a sponsor, hey, I need to know what your plan is for our event, and what you're handing out, how people will come in your tent, and things of that nature. And the PPE, will it be required of your vendors, staff, volunteers? I think it should be. You make that mandatory. But then again, who provides? And that's a question you as an event planner have to decide. I mean, if you guarantee it to happen, then you provide it. And there's no questions asked. You get it as they arrive, and you have sufficient quantities. So those are just things to think about there, and how you choose to handle that. I thought the Kentucky Derby Festival on the IFEA page, the COVID page, this particular event, I thought they had it was a nice one-page outline basically about volunteers. So I would check that out, because it just kind of gave a good overview and how you should maybe work with your volunteers this year, and everything from maybe they bring their own food and drink. So they had a lot of good suggestions. So I would refer to that one. I thought that was a good plan they put in place. Next. So this is obviously a big one. Very detailed checklist on the Event Safety Alliance plan. And so it's just something we're gonna have to do. You can't not do it. I think the question was asked, well, how much, what's the adequate number? I mean, what's for hand sanitizers? This is what when I asked United Site Services, they told me this is for 3,000 attendees, 10 additional quad hand sanitizer dispensers. So that was just, I threw that out there just as a little reference for moving forward. But again, who really knows the answer to this until we start having events? I think a disinfectant clean team is a must for your event, and you just have to decide if you have the adequate staffing to do it yourself or hiring professionals. We are hiring professionals to do it ourselves, for doing it for the event. I thought it was fairly reasonable, and they'll quote you a price for bringing their own chemicals, and I said just do it turnkey. And but the nice thing is that they can document for you what all they're doing, and that may be something you may need after your event, is to say, hey, we clean this, these surfaces X amount of times, but at least they can be providing that information to you in case you get asked afterwards. And again, extra steps, preparing your site. You can do the temperature checks, the distribution of masks. So that's just one more thing to consider. And obviously all this, the different ways you can set aside spacing indicators. Those are all just different methods there that you can use. You can see the circles there is we're doing that in an event in a couple weeks if we can still have the event, but we're actually drawing those out in fields. They're 10 feet in diameter, and they'll be about 7 feet apart. But I think those lines are important. The spacing, the tape, the temporary paint to show people where to stand. If for no other reason, it just helps reduce the attendee confrontation potential that you may have. Hey, you're standing too close, back up, it's there. So, and then the patron expectations, I think it's not just having the cleaning staff, but people seeing the cleaning staff and seeing them doing that. Again, they just need to be visible, and they don't come out after dark. No, they're there the whole time, and just have a schedule of what all they're cleaning. So just, but that Event Safety Alliance, I felt had a very good detailed plan in there. So I would definitely refer to that as well. Next. So this is critical. I mean, this is the messaging, the signage that we need to get out, that we're all in this together. And, we just have to change the expectations of our audience and let them know that these steps we're taking are for their safety, and that we'll all be better if everyone does this. And then we also need to let people know what we're doing, so it helps to calm their fears if they're nervous about coming to our event. So that's why we need to change those expectations. And I think the more we all do it collectively, then it just becomes part of the fabric of our events. It's just all part of the signage you start seeing. But what to explain? You've got all your new health procedures, your expectations. Remain positive, practical, and proportionate. And that by that I'm meaning you just don't want so much signage to do with health, but it's proportionate to the other signage of at your event, as far as the do's and don'ts. And so it's just part of the message board or the signage landscape that they see at the event. This two-way expectation street, I think it's we as the event lay that foundation of what we expect from our attendees to come, how they need to follow the posted rules, how they need to practice the measures that we put in place. That's what we expect from them. And then they know what to expect when they arrive at the event. They know that there may be longer waits. They know that there may be fewer activities. So it's that expectations two-way street that I think we all need to start having on our web. I mean, it starts now, and where to message, it's everywhere. And we can go through all the different channels that we all use to get the word out. Nothing's off limits, I should say, as to how we message. And for this drive-in event that we were going to do with the fireworks show, I mean, we were going to, once people got parked in their cars, then our teams were going to blanket the parking lot and put flyers under everyone's windshield wiper. So it's just as a reminder, hey, you're here now. Thanks for coming. And then here's just one more reminder of the rules of the event. But having that signage everywhere, you just don't want to wait till they get there before they see their first COVID message. By then it's too late. They need to be preparing in their minds what to expect, and even having them self-screen prior to the event and the checklist. And if you feel fever and you're having a cough, maybe just sit this one out. But just having them just reiterating that message, positive, and hey, we're all in this together for everyone's safety and yours. Kind of, that's how you start out those messages. And you just need to think visual, verbal, and written. it's all there. I mean, it's the verbal message from the stage announcements, whether it be from your mayor, the headlining band, or whoever. It's the written messages, it's the visual, and we'll show a few examples of that in a minute. But don't forget that you can't just forget about the ADA and that you may have those that are impaired, and so you need to take that into consideration with your messaging. And then if there's kids messaging, that as well, if they're coming with their parents, messages that target them and are kid friendly and that kind of thing. So this is just critical, and it's a given. You just have to do it. I've got some examples that I found out there. Just there's the next page. You can have fun with this, guys, and you can get creative. And whether it's a fishing rod or the type of event you're having. Those are just some examples. One was from Vermont. There, one lower left was Parks and Rec Department. And then the good old message board, the traffic sign, it's very handy, but it's something that can be moved around. And then the visual part, that's our message there in the middle, the welcome, but you can see not only the written word there, but those visual cues as well, just in case that someone, it's just the verbiage there, at least if they don't understand, they can see the visual there. So just some examples of some signage there. It doesn't have to be all black and white kind of thing. You can have get creative with that. And then the next page is just an example of our particular event we're doing. It's a website. It's our COVID page that it's right on the home page. You see it, and it just kind of goes through, again, the expectations of what before and while you're at the event, what we expect from you, and how this one, what we've done to prepare this site for your arrival kind of thing, and then letting you know what those steps are, what we're doing for you. And then again, it's just it's on our page there, but it's linked to off of several other pages, so that the word is there so that people can just start getting familiar with it. And then that last one there, that last part, actually it leads me right into the last slide here, and that is the legal disclaimer. Should your event have one? We do. This is what we have come up with for our event, and it's we kind of stole a little bit from the Disney World, what they had put out, but we made it our own, and this is what's out there on our website. It's at the event site, and it's just our disclaimer that basically, there is no foolproof event site, and it's our way of saying, if you attend, we'd love to have you, but there is risk involved with being here at the event site. So that's our sample there. But that kind of wraps up the presentation. I will say in closing that one thing that I've just learned from all of this, from when this started happening, is you're just going to have to be flexible. There's just no way around it. It's be flexible. Things are changing daily, and it's a test. And it's Kay and I were talking before this. This has been a mental exercise. It's just been unreal at times. But you're just going to have to be flexible. That's the name of the game. And I think it's okay to say to someone, if asked a question, I don't know, because a lot of it we don't know. Our mayor asked us this morning in a conference call about our fireworks show, hey, because it's in a new location, are people on this side of Farmers Branch and in this park over here going to be able to see the show? And the honesty is, I don't know. We won't know until the show starts. And that's just and that answer is out there a lot, but there's no shame in it, because we just don't know a lot right now. So that's just kind of the wraps things up on my end for the presentation. I thank you for sticking it out with us today. It looks like we have a little bit of time for some questions, if anyone has any.
Absolutely. So if you have any questions, feel free to use the raise my hand functionality, or there is also a question and answer panel where you can type in a question. It did look like we got a note from Mike Baxter in Tomball. He let us know that Harris County is now requiring approval by the county judge for gatherings over 500 with submission of a full plan regarding COVID. So that one's specific to the Harris County area. And I think that's just the one of those things we're going to have to get used to, Jeff, is that it's going to be different across the state, it sounds like, as things are able to be decided at a local jurisdiction.
Yeah, and during the course of this presentation, Megan just walked in and with a handwritten note that said canceled. So I know what she's referring to, and that's our fireworks show was on for next Thursday, and that one's now canceled. So flexibility, folks.
Flexibility.
deep breaths.
Exactly. Sorry to hear that. Yep. If anybody has any questions, feel free to type them into the question panel or raise your hand. Otherwise, Kay, you want to go ahead and do any closing announcements?
I'll do some closing announcements and you watch for the hands.
I will.
Okay. Next week, there will not be a COVID-19 task force webinar, primarily because of July the 4th. We didn't know how many people, and obviously those are falling off pretty fast this past week. And today would be doing an event, but the next week on July the 9th, we will have our webinar, and it's going to be related to July the 4th. What did you learn from your July 4th event experience? It may just be, well, we canceled, but that's what the title is going to be. And then we will switch to doing webinars every other week. Many people are, really struggling to get all of them in. And since we're starting our TIMI workshops next week, our very first one will be on Tuesday, June the 30th. And the topic is business plans. The information has gone out to to all of our people many times. However, if you don't know about it and you want to be a part of it, please reach out to me, k@tfea.org, or look on our webpage, tfea.org, and you can find all of the information about that. We will be doing a TIMI workshop once a month through April. We will complete 13. And also, just as a heads up, anybody that has a suggestion for a webinar on our every other week, we still are taking ideas. If something comes up that you see is you really need help on and could use a webinar about it, then please reach out and tell us. That's what we're here for.
Very good. Okay, so we did have some items come in. We had one person ask if we could share this call with the group, and we will be posting we recorded the webinar session, so we'll be posting the video, and we'll also include Jeff's slides on that on our website. And then Sherry has her hand raised, so I will go ahead and open up your microphone. And it looks like you might have your microphone muted on your own computer, Sherry. So if you can unmute yourself, then you'll be able to talk. And then while we wait for Sherry, if she's able to join the call, I also had, oh, okay, never mind. I answered Sherry's question already. Never mind. We also had, I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce it correctly, but I think it's Dahlin Ruiz, provided another resource that they found to be helpful. It's a COVID screening tool, and I will post that URL to all attendees in the chat window. So let me go ahead and pull that up. And the URL, if you want to write it down, I have posted it to all attendees in the chat window, but it is just www.apple.com/COVID-19. So definitely potentially good resources there as well. Doesn't look like we have any other questions or comments. Does that wrap it up for you, Kay?
That pretty much wraps it up for me. I want to say thank you to Jeff for putting this together and bringing it to everyone. And once again, thank you to all the attendees. The TFEA office is open basically all the time. Since I work from home, if the phone rings, I'll answer it. I check my messages on the weekends. So, if you have a question, you can't find an answer, call and I'll help you search for it. That's what we're here for. That's it.
All right, sounds good. Thanks so much, Jeff.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.